You're tuned into Why America. I'm Leeja Miller. Today, I want to do what I love to do, which is connect some insidious little dots for you across various seemingly unrelated headlines this week. First, as we discussed on Wednesday, a major merger is brewing between Paramount and Skydance, and the FCC just approved the $8 billion bid to further conglomerate our available media in this country, so long as they promise to make sure there's no pesky DEI bullshit infecting Paramount or its news arm, CBS. Second, the Trump regime just unveiled its AI action plan, promising deregulation and a try-first mentality to AI innovation in America. Basically, move fast and break things to win the race to artificial superintelligence. And third, yesterday Trump signed an executive order that makes it easier to criminalize homelessness and mental illness. What does all of this have in common? Oh, it's a rabbit hole, my dear. Let's get into it. First, the Skydance and Paramount merger. See my video from Wednesday for a deeper dive on that issue, but the basics are this. Skydance has been in talks to merge with Paramount, but they needed permission from the FCC so that it made sure that it's in the public good because of those pesky antitrust laws that we never actually bother enforcing. Because of this, Paramount has been willing to dance with the Trump regime, giving him a $16 million bribe earlier this year to settle his frivolous lawsuit over a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris that Trump claimed was unfair. Now, CBS's Late Night with Stephen Colbert has been canceled, allegedly because it was a money-losing venture, which may be true, but taken in the context of everything else, including Colbert's long history of criticizing Trump and parent company Paramount's attempt to play nice with the regime in order to get its sweet merger, it all looks pretty suspicious. Though, of course, then you have the bombshell South Park episode that dropped Wednesday, tearing Trump apart right after Paramount just signed a $1.5 billion contract with South Park creators. The show depicts Trump in bed with Satan and includes a very convincing deepfake political ad featuring a naked Trump wandering through the desert. But it's satire. Free speech, am I right? I'm sure whatever legal team is stuck dealing with the fallout from South Park episodes is prepared for any potential litigation in the wake of this episode, though so far there have just been reports of Trump being mad and a spokesperson saying that South Park hasn't been relevant for 20 years. So it's unclear how much oversight Comedy Central parent company Paramount had over this episode, because they have yet to comment on it. Despite this apparent hiccup, however, the FCC has agreed to allow the Skydance Paramount merger to go forward. Often, the way that news outlets report on a story differs depending on the bias of the publication, and it's hard to know how your own perception of bias influences your interpretation of the news. This headline from the Associated Press caught my eye. The FCC approves Paramount's $8 billion deal with Skydance after months of chaos and political intrigue. Using the Ground News browser extension, I can see that in the US, the Associated Press is considered left-leaning. To get a fuller picture of the story on all sides of the political spectrum, I can click on full coverage, which will show me coverage of the same story from publications across the political spectrum. My partner on today's video, Ground News, uses 3 independent monitoring organizations to assess the bias rating for each publication. Each news monitoring organization has their own methodology, including editorial reviews, blind bias surveys, independent reviews, and third-party research. These are legit independent organizations, but they are limited by the data available to them. Their analysis is done in the context of the US political system. Our Overton window has shifted so far right that the Associated Press is considered left-leaning. That tells you a lot about the context within which the media you're consuming operates. And thanks to Ground News, I get even more context, including how factual each publication is and who owns it, giving me a well-rounded idea of the motivations, biases, and accuracy of the news I'm consuming. Like, wouldn't it be great if everyone in America had that much information about the news they consume? Because depending on where you or your family members get the news, you're going to get very different takes on the same story. This is where Ground News comes in and why I've been using them for over a year. Today's partner, Ground News, is an app and website that offers tools to help you critically analyze the news you read, providing context to understand the full picture. I feel better equipped to make sense of what's happening in the world without being influenced by just one perspective. And listen, I'm not the only one who loves Ground News. The Nobel Peace Center even called it an excellent way to stay informed, avoid echo chambers, and expand your worldview. I'm always really impressed with Ground News and genuinely think they're a great resource. If you want to stay informed on US politics and more, subscribe through my QR code or the link below at ground.news/Leeja for 40% off this unlimited access Vantage plan. It comes out to $5 a month for unlimited access to all the features I've mentioned. Thanks, Ground News. This major merger is relevant to our discussion today because the owner of Skydance is David Ellison, son of Larry Ellison. Daddy Ellison is allegedly helping to fund this merger. Larry Ellison is the second richest man in the world and the founder of Oracle, Oracle. After the merger, Oracle and the new Paramount have discussed a $100 million per year cloud computing partnership. Oracle facilitates cloud computing and helps businesses and the government manage, store, and analyze data. So partnering with AI companies is a natural step for a company attempting to deal with vast swaths of data. Oracle also has billions of dollars of government contracts, including a $500 billion partnership with OpenAI to develop a 5 gigawatt Stargate AI data center in the US, specifically in Abilene, Texas, located smack dab in the middle of the state, not far from Fort Worth and Dallas. In March, More Perfect Union did a piece covering the experience of residents living outside Mark Zuckerberg's data center in Mansfield, Georgia. Residents there report almost zero water pressure and sediment contamination in what water they can get as a result of the data center's environmental contamination and excessive power and water usage, not to mention the noise and light pollution they experience and the amount of dust and debris that was created during construction of the massive data center. Plus, the cost of the electrical usage often gets passed to everyday consumers in the form of higher electricity bills. Meanwhile, state lawmakers receive gobs of cash from data centers and energy companies in exchange for fast-tracking data center creation. And Meta's data center is 2 gigawatts. Now, Oracle and OpenAI are building a 5 gigawatt center in Texas, a state known for having an abysmal, unstable electrical grid already. And as More Perfect Union reported in that piece on the Meta data center, tech billionaires are pissed at the amount of bureaucracy, regulation, and red tape they have to go through in order to create these massive data centers, which has been a problem for decades because data centers are necessary for cloud computing and the internet as well. In an attempt to appease Silicon Valley, Trump signed an executive order a few months ago, moving the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission under control of the White House, declaring an energy emergency, because you can turn anything into an emergency and then claim complete presidential authority over it, and vowing to move forward quickly with advancing AI, which then, of course, brings us to the AI action plan that the Trump regime announced yesterday. This plan came out of an executive order Trump signed back in January called Removing Barriers to American Leadership in Artificial Intelligence, which stated that, quote, "It is the policy of the United States to sustain and enhance America's global AI dominance in order to promote human flourishing, economic competitiveness, and national security," and directed various agencies and leadership to come up with an action plan. Specifically, the directive went to the Assistant to the President for Science and Technology, 𝗦𝗫𝗧𝗏, and the Special Advisor for AI and Crypto, David Sachs. �𝗫𝗧𝗏 served as the Chief Technology Officer of the United States under Trump's first term, and prior to that, he worked as a principal at Thiel Capital and served as chief of staff to tech billionaire Peter Thiel. For more lowdown on Peter Thiel, check out my episodes about who owns J.D. Vance and about Curtis Yarvin. Thiel is part of the Silicon Valley camp that believes that democracy actually gets in the way of freedom, monarchy or some elite tech oligarch ruling class would be better for everyone, and AI should be allowed to flourish without regulation because once we finally achieve peak AGI, artificial general intelligence, that is AI that's fully sentient, equal to or beyond human intelligence, then humans will finally be able to flourish. These are billionaires who have reached truly incomprehensible levels of delusion. Thiel also funded J.D. Vance's Senate election, gave him access to tech elite in California, spoke at the Republican National Convention in favor of Trump, and became a major Trump donor. Thiel also co-founded PayPal with Elon Musk. David Sachs, remember Trump's special advisor for AI and crypto in charge of this newly released AI action plan, that David Sachs, he was the first chief operating officer of PayPal and has close ties with Thiel, Musk, and other of the libertarian Silicon Valley ilk. In fact, back in their Stanford days, together, David Sachs and Peter Thiel worked on the school newspaper, the Stanford Review. Cute, except that they did things like publish a rape issue in which Sachs authored an article calling into question the validity of statutory rape as a crime. This was 1992. In 1995, Thiel and Sachs wrote a book together called The Diversity Myth, Multiculturalism and Political Intolerance on Campus. The book, according to the LA Times, quote, argued that multiculturalism in colleges was hurting education and that some cases of alleged date rape were actually seductions that are later regretted. For context, multiculturalism in the 90s was a favorite boogeyman the way woke is today. So naturally, David Sachs has also evolved his rhetoric to scorn woke ideology. According to Sachs, as reported on by the New Republic, quote, everything is run by Democrats with college degrees who enact the tyranny of woke progressivism. Even big corporations, Sachs tweeted, are run by Marxists, echoing the long-held belief of DeSantis that companies like Disney promote a woke ideology. He, like many of his fellow tech oligarchs, claims to be of the people while having gone to Stanford inferred and being so out of touch it actually boggles the mind. Sachs was a major supporter of Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter and deeply critical of what he saw as social media companies unfairly infringing on free speech rights. David Sachs is also a donor to Donald Trump's 2024 campaign, of course, and was introduced to Donald Trump Jr., according to the New York Times, through his friend J.D. Vance. Sachs later hosted a fundraiser for Trump at his $20 million home on San Francisco's Billionaires Row, where tickets started at $50,000 per plate, and the event raised $12 million for Trump's re-election campaign. And then, just a few months later, David Sachs was named Trump's crypto and AI czar. You see, since leaving PayPal, Sachs went on to found a variety of companies, including Genie.com, later acquired by MyHeritage.com, Yammer, later acquired by Microsoft, and Callin, a podcast hosting platform later acquired by conservative video platform Rumble. And he founded a venture capital firm called Craft Ventures. Craft Ventures has significant investments in AI and crypto. Sachs still has a stake in Craft Ventures while also overseeing AI and crypto regulations in his special government employee position as AI and crypto czar. But since he's a special little government employee, just like Musk was, he didn't have to go through the formal vetting and confirmation process. And in March, Trump issued an ethics waiver to David Sachs, basically saying there's no conflict of interest to see here, though prior to joining the Trump administration, Sachs did sell off $200 million worth of crypto investments, a sell-off that just happened to coincide with a massive surge in crypto value after Trump won re-election. So we've got David Sachs collabing with 𝗦𝗫𝗧𝗏 to come up with the US's AI action plan, both of whom have deep ties to the AI private sector, including top dog evil billionaires Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, all of whom stand to gain a fuck ton of money and power the more AI grows and the fewer regulations getting in the way. And that is precisely what this AI action plan calls for. The intro compares the AI revolution to the space race, calling it an industrial revolution, an information revolution, and a renaissance all in one. And it lays out three pillars: innovation, infrastructure, and international diplomacy and security. To innovate, the US must remove pesky regulations. The plan also calls for limiting federal funds to any state that tries to pass laws that get in the way of AI innovation. Basically, the big beautiful bill ended up not barring states from passing AI regulations, which Congress decided was probably a bad idea. So instead, we're recommending that states be denied funding if they dare to pass AI regulations. It also recommends that AI should be programmed to avoid mentioning DEI or climate change, and the federal government should only partner with AI companies that can ensure that their AI is free from ideological bias. It then basically calls on the government to do everything it can to ensure rapid, move fast and break things style adoption of AI across all levels of society, from the private sector to the federal government. Under the infrastructure pillar, it calls for streamlined permitting for data centers, meaning removing regulations, including for pesky things like the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. It also calls on the government to make federal land available for data center build sites, and internationally, it calls for exporting US AI innovation to our partners and allies, attempting to break China's AI dominance, and advocate for global AI regulations that are as loose and flimsy as the ones we're developing here in the US. Tech CEOs are, of course, applauding Trump's visionary AI action plan, which is a major win for anyone with financial stakes in the AI industry. An article just published in MIT Technology Review lays out the contradictions in this flashy new AI plan. It says, quote, "While the tech industry cheered these announcements, which will swell their coffers, they obscured the fact that the administration is currently decimating the very policies that enabled America to become the world leader in AI in the first place. Those policies are federal investment in research and development, which is being slashed under Trump, whose budget recommends a 36% cut to non-defense R&D spending. Trump supporters claim that the R&D budget will be made up by the private sector investment in R&D. The problem is that the private sector will only invest in R&D that furthers their own bottom line, which often isn't the same as the kind of R&D that will benefit the public or even the national security of the US. Federal investment in R&D is essential to create technological advancements long before they're profitable to private enterprise. Additionally, supporting immigration is a major piece of ensuring innovation, as highly skilled immigrants make up a large percentage of the researchers and scientists that are behind our technological breakthroughs. According to the article, quote, "Today's generative AI is based on the transformer model, the T in ChatGPT, first described by a team at Google in 2017. 6 of the 8 researchers on that team were born outside the US, and the other 2 are children of immigrants." Further moves by the Trump regime that actually hinder innovation also include blocking a nationwide nationwide ban on non-competes, California's ban on non-competes, has meant that former employees at major tech companies have been able to go on and found more firms, allowing for greater innovation, as opposed to other states where onerous non-competes bar former employees from working in the same industry for a period of time. Trump moved to block a proposed nationwide ban on non-competes, which can stifle innovation. And then there's the FTC, tasked with overseeing antitrust investigations. Trump has called for the loosening of FTC restrictions and settlements that he claims hinder AI innovation, when in reality, a lack of antitrust enforcement means less competition and less innovation. An inconvenient reality when you're friends with and being advised by people who have made their fortunes off an increasingly monopolized tech sector and who are intent on making as much money as humanly possible, while also allowing AI to grow unchecked by pesky laws that are worried about the common good or whatever stupid shit like that. Because these tech megalomaniacs have zero grasp on reality and are fully sold on the idea that technological innovation, no matter the cost, is always going to be in the best interests of humanity, no matter the actual human cost in the form of environmental devastation, inequality, and deepening poverty, among so many other things. And in fact, the increasing turn towards fascism in this country can be directly linked to the tech oligarchy that has sprung up, especially in the wake of deregulation and the 21st century technology boom. Journalist Abby Richards has been screaming about the dystopian reality that AI will bring for years. She has drawn direct lines between the creation and flourishing of AI and the spread of fascism.
How does AI help Nazis? I've been tracking how losers use AI to create racist propaganda for years now. I've seen them use talking templates to create transphobic rage bait. I've seen them use AI-generated images to create racist propaganda. I've seen them use AI to bring Hitler speeches to life in English. They have routinely been ahead of the AI learning curve, but this isn't actually unique to AI. Nazi dweebs have always used new technology to get their message out.
AI is the ultimate misinformation slop disseminator, and the more you can convince the people that everything around them is terrifying and you don't know what you can believe, even your very own eyes, the more control you can have over them. Convincing people that their lives are at risk because of outsiders through the creation of violent racist propaganda at a scale unprecedented in human history is a really great way to maintain control. And the one major way that fascists love to do that, with or without the help of AI, is through fear-mongering about cities.
Why do fascists hate cities and, by extension, fun? It's not just Fox. Modern conservatives hate cities.
They want to make you live in downtown areas and high-rise buildings and walk to work.
In his article, Imagine No Big Cities, conservative supervillain Dennis Prager said that big cities are centers of destructive ideas. Trump and Vance literally campaigned on insulting the cities that they visited, but this trend isn't actually modern at all. Throughout history, fascists have hated cities. According to Italian fascist dictator Benito Mussolini, cities were like parasites that live off the hard work of a rural people. At a certain point, the city starts growing in a diseased, pathological way, not through its own resources, but through external support. It's actually kind of the other way around, but who needs facts when you have rage? And Hitler described cities as places where all evils, vices, and sicknesses appear to unite. They are above all hotbeds of blood mixing and bastardization. I mean, don't tempt me with a good time. Hitler actually had this utopian anti-city plan where he was going to take over Poland, displace 31 million people, and build these massive networks of rural settlements for his little master race fantasy. Okay, so why are fascists like this? Fascists rise to power by arguing that racial or sexual diversity is ruining the homeland, but cities kind of debunk that. Cities are places where a bunch of different types of people of different races, different religions, different values, different cultures coexist and live amongst each other. And the people who live there seem to really like it. The bigger, more diverse, and less segregated a city is, the lower that people there score on an implicit bias test. Like, the more you interact with people who are different than you, the less prejudiced you become. It's that simple. The fact that cities with all their racial diversity and drag brunches exist and even thrive without collapsing threatens the fascist worldview, which is why fascist propaganda is so invested in convincing us that cities are actually collapsing.
And what is the most obvious and visual representation of the danger and decay of our cities? Homelessness. Enter our final piece of the puzzle of major headlines this week. Yesterday, Trump signed an executive order called Ending Crime and Disorder on America's Streets. In it, he claims, quote, shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for humane treatment through the appropriate use of civil commitment will restore public order. The order calls for, among many other things, an end to housing first models that emphasize getting people housed first and then, once their living situation is more stable, providing resources for substance abuse and mental health issues. Housing first models are promoted by practitioners and professionals who actually work in the field with people experiencing homelessness, but have become vilified as not punitive enough. The order also calls for an end to harm reduction and safe consumption sites. The order also bars federal funding for states that do not adequately enforce anti-encampment laws and provides more funding to law enforcement to tear down encampment sites and collect data on people experiencing homelessness. It also calls for moving homeless individuals off the streets, out of public programs, and into privatized institutions. This includes involuntary commitment for those who are, quote, a threat to themselves or others. And it calls for prioritizing federal funding for programs that require sobriety and treatment as a prerequisite for housing. Basically, the Trump regime acknowledges that homelessness is an issue, but believes that the best way to deal with it is to round people up and put them away so that we no longer have to look at them anymore. It provides zero actual services to the unhoused and merely aims at making the problem disappear. It claims to want to deal with the underlying issue of homelessness, but the entire Trump regime has been hard at work making underlying causes of mental health disorders and homelessness even worse, gutting social services, increasing the wealth gap, and doing away with civil rights protections that attempt to undo centuries of oppression, all of which have been proven to lead to increased incidents of mental illness, drug use, and homelessness. According to NPR, quote, critics said the sweeping action does nothing to solve homelessness and could make it worse. This executive order is forcing people to choose between compassionate, data-driven approaches like housing or treating it like a crime to have a mental illness or be homeless, said 𝗬𝗓 with the National Homelessness Law Center. Institutionalizing people with mental illness, including those experiencing homelessness, is not a dignified, safe, or evidence-based way to serve people's needs, Ann 𝗬𝗓 with the National Alliance to End Homelessness said in a statement. Oh, and Trump completely gutted the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness earlier this year. Ending Housing First and other programs aimed at ending homelessness that have had bipartisan support for decades was a key component in the recommendations in Project 2025. Again, because fascists love to hate on cities, and ever since COVID, homelessness has been on the rise. But instead of addressing actual underlying causes, like increased poverty, lack of funding for social safety nets, especially for children, or an increasingly brutal housing crisis caused by a major housing shortage, which is only going to get worse as we deport more and more construction workers and slap tariffs on more and more construction materials. The Trump regime's solution is to forcibly institutionalize unhoused and mentally ill people and penalize any state or city that doesn't comply with its draconian demands. Again, this plays into the fascist worldview that cities are dangerous cesspools that need greater policing and control. Because God forbid we gained empathy, lowered our racial biases, or gained class consciousness by having to interact with people who don't look exactly like us. And I can talk from my experience living in Minneapolis for most of the last decade. The city has absolutely changed in that time, and in some ways for the worse. COVID led to the shuttering of businesses. The unrest in the wake of George Floyd's murder only made it worse, with many businesses still boarded up and buildings remaining vacant 5 years later. Homelessness is absolutely on the rise. We have seen the creation and destruction of numerous tent cities over the last 5 years here. Crime, including carjackings and robberies, spiked around 2021, but the fear of that crime still remains. There are parts of the city you can go to and see people openly shooting up at any time of the night or day. It's not pleasant to live in a city where you are bombarded every day by the suffering of the people around you. We absolutely need to support the creation of affordable housing, mental health services, and other social safety nets for people experiencing homelessness, hunger, and poverty. We need to redistribute the vast amounts of wealth in this state, home to numerous Fortune 500 companies and tons of multimillionaires who benefit from living in such an amazing state where people are homeless and starving on the streets of Minneapolis, while less than a mile away, millionaires enjoy their lakefront properties. And while I have conservative in-laws who refuse to come into the city, big scary 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗧, people love living here in Minneapolis, and I sure as shit wouldn't trade it for the suburbs. Sorry, I enjoy fun. I enjoy being where things are happening. There are ways to make this city better for everyone that don't play into the fascist worldview that it's the immigrants, the mentally ill, the poor, and the drug-addled who are making everything worse. I will not be convinced to hate the woman who asked me for bus fare outside a coffee shop this morning. Not when absolute fucking creeps like David Sachs and Michael Kratsios and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and all the other tech millionaires and billionaires you've never heard of, but who have been funding the right-wing fascist takeover of this country, laugh and laugh at how easily we are all distracted by hating immigrants and poor people instead of directing our hate and blame at the actual culprits of our suffering. The people who make money off absolutely fucking over our environment. The people who buy out our politicians in order to hoard more and more wealth for themselves while people starve. The people who will giddily watch the fall of democracy if it means more power, control, and wealth for themselves. They don't give two shits whether any of us lives or dies. They don't give a fuck about humane treatment of people experiencing mental health crises and homelessness. They want to do the same to them as they're doing to immigrants and have been doing to black people in this country. Criminalize the fuck out of them and then lock them up in privately controlled prisons where under the 13th Amendment they can extract their labor for free and funnel federal money, our tax dollars, into private prison enterprises who in turn will use AI to create databases of our names and any other data they can collect about us so that if they can't imprison us, at least they can more effectively advertise to us. I'm sorry this has turned into a tirade, but I can already hear the trolls in the comments talking about how poor people and homeless people should just pick themselves up by their bootstraps and take accountability for the suffering that they likely have experienced throughout their lives, either directly or indirectly, because of the millionaires and billionaires now pushing their fascist tech oligarchy wet dreams down our throats and onto the masses. It's fucking disgusting. And the headlines this week, major mergers, AI proliferation, and forced institutionalization of people experiencing homelessness, are all symptoms of the same disgusting, festering illness of capitalist greed in this country. This is why people like Zohran Mamdani are gaining momentum. This is why people like Democratic Socialist 𝗬𝗓𝗦𝗧𝗧 is getting more attention in his bid for mayor of Minneapolis, no matter what our big business-loving, cop-loving piece of shit Mayor Jacob Frey claims in his complaints that the endorsement from the DFL vote was rigged. And this is why I consider it my solemn duty to continue connecting these dots for you week after week to ensure that we all see what's really going on, behind the scenes, beyond the chaos of the 24-hour news cycle. And I will continue to be here week after week to continue to do just that. If you want to support my work, all my videos are completely ad-free and uncensored over on Patreon, patreon.com/LeejaMiller. Thank you to my multi-platinum patrons, Mark, Sarah Shelby, Art, David, RH, Latranger Lucas, Thomas Johnson, and Tay. Your generosity makes this channel what it is, so thank you. And if you like this episode, you'll like the one from Wednesday about how the Trump regime is eroding the media. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.